Welcome to the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, where you get multifamily investing made real. Learn from top players in the real estate investment world as they share their secrets with you and discover proven strategies on apartment investing that actually work. To learn more about Wheelbarrow Profits, visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. Now to your hosts, Jake and Gino.
Hello, everybody. This is Gino Barbaro, the host of Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast. I'm flying solo today, guys. My buddy Jake is not here with me. Not feeling the love today, but anyway, we have a great show lined up for you today. Let me introduce to you Nick Raithel. He's the creator of the 7-Hour Book. This proven system allows any investor to get their own professionally published book while spending only 7 hours of their time on it. With the 7-Hour Book, Nick is on a mission to help investors finally get the recognition they deserve. Time and again, he's seen investors in nearly every community who have incredible stories and knowledge to share. A book is the ultimate way for them to share their insights and be recognized. Yet the issue always seems to be that no one has any time. Seeing this, Nick combined advanced time management strategies with his own experiences in publishing and marketing. The result was the 7-Hour Book, a service that's been delighting clients ever since. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Gino. It's great to be here.
Let's start off. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, your story, and how you've gotten to the 7-Hour Book?
Certainly. I think the best place to begin would be an experience I had a couple of years ago. When I was working at the time with a doctor, he approached books very differently than I think many of your listeners, Gino, have seen, and certainly how I'd seen it. He wasn't looking at becoming a New York Times bestselling author. He wasn't looking at having his book everywhere in Barnes & Noble. He was looking at using it for speaking gigs, using it to have his own course, and really using it to build a platform for himself. From that experience, I realized that books could be something different. And with that and time management principles that I've studied as well, I was able to come up with this 7-Hour Book to really give business owners, especially investors too, the opportunity to shortcut the process and get into all of the benefits that a book has.
Can you list some of those benefits to people? I mean, I know right off the top, it gives you instant credibility. There's nothing better than giving somebody a book, having signed it. It gives you a little ego boost saying, hey, I wrote a book. Here's my book. What other benefits do you see a book giving you?
Yeah, those benefits that you mentioned are certainly ones you can have from a book. I know before this call, Gino, you mentioned your cookbook and all of the instant credibility that brought.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, come back to speaking. You can certainly secure speaking gigs. Most professional speakers that you'll see listed in an events program will say they're the author of such and such book. Having your own course, being able to do consulting, that's another very big benefit. In addition, let's not forget the fact that you can just sell the thing. You can't do that with blog posts. You can't do that necessarily with podcast recordings. Any of these other mediums are free, rightly so in many cases, but you can't sell them. Versus a book, which all else fails, you can always pop a little bit of a price on it and make some revenue on the back end.
One thing that Jake and I realized when we were doing the book was we're writing it and we really educated ourselves and we learned a lot. Do you get that from any of your people who are writing books with you that, wow, I've learned a lot from going through this process?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would point to one of the clients' real estate. I've learned quite a bit. I didn't even know what FSBOs were. I'd never heard of the term,
mm-hmm.
But now I have very clear for sale by owner. All these real estate terms in that case, in particular, suddenly became relevant, suddenly became I knew what they were. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. So I would also say that not only have I and my staff acquired quite a bit of knowledge about a variety of different industries, but in many respects, we help our clients, the people we're assisting with the book, we help them to know their businesses better, to really understand their industries too. It goes back to when you want to understand something better, one of the best ways is to teach it. So with our clients, teaching us essentially their businesses, teaching us their industry, they themselves end up knowing it better and even coming up with new business plans in some cases.
I love that because that's our model. Our model is learn, do, teach. Basically, you got to learn something. Then once you start learning it, you jump in and you start doing it. And then on the back end, once you've done it, we've accumulated a ton of units. We start teaching it. And the best way to be an expert is not to know everything and to continuously learn. So the model that you're presenting is you're telling these people you have to dive deeper into what you know, into your experience, put it down on paper. And once you do that, you're really teaching yourself and you're expanding your mindset and you're expanding your knowledge. I love that. Let me ask you, what's the greatest property that every investor owns?
I would say the greatest property isn't necessarily one people would think of at the first drop of the hat, so to speak. I would say that the first property, or the greatest property rather, is your life experience. The idea behind that being that it's more valuable than really anything else because it's yours. You carry it with you. What I mean, too, with your life experience, I mean all of the experiences that have gone into each of us, making us the people we are. Whether it's schooling we received, whether it was early apprenticeships and internships, whether it was feelings we've had, stories we've heard, just the collective experiences we've had come together to form this life experience. And that is really what makes someone an expert. That is really what gives someone their platform, their viewpoint on the world. And it's the most valuable because it's yours. You have that. Relating this then to, I think, the larger topic of what does it all mean? It means that this is what gives you your signature. This is what makes you an expert. This is what can make you higher up in your field necessarily than other people. It's yours, and it's this unique asset that you can choose to leverage or potentially waste. And unfortunately, Gino, I see a number of business owners, a number of investors wasting it, not taking advantage of this.
And as you see that, do you help these quote-unquote experts develop a story? Because what Jake and I have realized is people love to hear personal stories. They love to hear what's going on with Gino. How did he get out of his space and get into real estate? Almost as much as they like to know how to buy real estate. Do you help authors develop their own story?
Absolutely. In fact, we find that those make the best books, and that it really is. If you're going to do a book, it should not just be this marketing tool. It certainly helps with marketing. It certainly helps with branding and authority. But if we're going to do any kind of a book, it should be, at least in some way, a story, something compelling, something to really add value and entertain people, in addition to just teaching them the concepts, and in addition, of course, to just promoting the person.
I love that. How can investors develop this property into a profitable asset?
Well, one of the ways is to really think about what it is that makes them unique as an investor. So is it the fact that, for example, they spent time overseas? If they were investing in overseas property and offering that expertise? Or like yourself, Gino, if they'd formerly not even been in the field and now they're coming into it fresh, they've got a fresh set of eyes, they used to do something completely different, like have a pizza business. So it's those sort of things that they should really look back, look into the past, use that as a guide going forward to create, to use some more cooking terms, your secret sauce, your special sauce.
Yes.
And I would say use that as a starting point.
Do you like to work with specific genres? Like we've already mentioned the cookbook and real estate. Do you like to focus in on any specific genre, or will you work with anybody?
We like to work with people who have an established business, are not just getting started, because we find that people who are established have been established for a few years, usually upwards of 5 years. They tend to have a better handle on why it is that they're doing this. They tend to know their industries better as well. And with respect to what you were saying, the industries, I would say definitely real estate and any kind of other small business or small service business, real estate service, attorneys, tax CPAs, those sort of industries where expertise is fundamentally necessary. There's quite a few others practicing it, and it becomes essential to differentiate yourself.
Nick, do you find it difficult when you deal with these industries that have their own acronyms and they're talking about cash-on-cash return, or they're talking about debt coverage ratios? Do you find it difficult to translate that into a book?
No, I really don't, because one of the things that we do is we work to educate ourselves with the clients we work with. The educational process being that we dive into it beyond what they tell us, beyond what we necessarily even need to know to create the book, to help them publish it. We really try to immerse ourselves. And with that immersion, we begin to see threads. We begin to see, in many cases, getting down to it, we begin to see phrases and analogies and stories that we can use to then communicate it in plain English, to take some of the terms you mentioned, Gino, and make them very easy and very accessible for the average reader.
I think that's a great point. When you're learning something like a cash-on-cash return, and it's great when you don't know it because you have to explain it to another person reading the book in layman's terms. So coming from that perspective, I think you have an advantage because you're learning it and you're putting it into simple layman's terms, and it makes it easier for the person writing the book to convey his message. So I think you're spot on with that.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, shall we say, than just going on Investopedia or one of those websites and cut and paste the answer.
Yes, I agree. What would be the first steps to getting started?
Well, the first step we typically have for the majority of people we work with is something called the starter set. The starter set allows the person who's considering a book to take their first initial steps without becoming fully committed to the project. It allows them to make a serious start, to get the book out of their head, so to speak, and with that, to really see if this is for them. What the starter set is it provides the person with a roadmap for doing the book. It also helps them to develop the idea. We have a specific set of exercises, what we call the idea development kit, which helps them to really form the idea, to test it too against what it is that their market even wants, and a couple of other materials in there. So that's sort of the starter set. It allows the person to get the idea out of their head. It also allows us to see, along with the possible aspiring author, if this would be a match between us. Because when you're doing a book with someone, on either side, it has to be a mutual fit. It's sort of like a marriage, in the sense, Gino, that you and your listeners wouldn't hopefully rush into a marriage, wouldn't rush into a long-term relationship. It has to be a fit, and the starter set really helps us and our prospective author find out if this is going to be a fit.
Hey everybody, Jake here, and sorry I missed you this week, but we do have a special announcement from our halftime show.
Are you stuck on the sidelines experiencing analysis by paralysis? Are you still trying to get your first multifamily deal done? We've never met an investor who's only done one deal. People are either stuck on the sidelines or they've done multiple deals. We always say that it's education times action that equal results. You come to the education side of the equation. Let us help you land your first deal. Call Jake and Gino today at 904-314-9473 to set up a strategy session, or email us at gino@jakeandgino.com.
Woo! Love that guy. Now back to the show.
What is the 7-hour book? Just define that for us.
Okay. The 7-hour book is a system that we use at Content Core to help aspiring authors and people who've realized the tremendous benefits of having a book, to help them shortcut the process and not have to spend weeks, months, years dragging on endlessly thinking about it. And if they do decide to get serious and kind of pull the trigger, we want to save them that same amount of time or even longer putting the book together themselves. because it can turn into an ordeal. So what we do is our process cuts all that down. The person themselves who we're working with is only required to spend a maximum of about 7 hours of their own time. I want to be very clear on that too, because it doesn't take us just 7 hours to put the book together. Mm-hmm. It takes us quite a bit more than that. But the 7 hours part is the time commitment that's required from the people we're working with. So they can spend those 7 hours, which is distributed over a certain time frame depending on the person, but they don't have to spend more than that. They can go back to managing their business. They can get this book sort of written as they go, not having to devote any real attention, not having the book become this distraction, this headache. Just 7 hours.
Can you elaborate on other services that you offer?
Yeah, I would say that those really are the principal ones that we're focusing on right now. Mm-hmm. Being the starter set, being the 7 hour book.
I have a question here. Can you really write a book in just 7 hours?
Well, that comes back, Gino, to the fact that we're not spending only 7 hours on it. So on our back end, my company Content Core, myself too, we're spending quite a bit more than 7 hours. Mm-hmm. But the person we're working with, the aspiring author, they are only spending 7 hours.
I love that. We touched a little bit before on why a real estate investor wants his own book. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, since most of the people on this call, listening to this call, are in some fashion, whether they're a home inspector, whether they're an attorney, why would they want their own book written?
Sure. A book gives you authority, and it also gives you what we term the thud factor. The thud factor is related to the sound, the thud that happens when your physical book, not an ebook, but your physical book lands on someone's desk. When the package that you've sent to your clients, which has your book in it, thuds on their desk. It's this physical thing that mints you as an authority, which in real estate or in investing is essential, since there's no shortage of realtors out there. There's no shortage of real estate professionals out there. You've got to stand out. You've got to brand yourself and get above the fray. And a book does that for you.
That's an excellent point. I've always been wondering when books are going to die out, and I think you just nailed it for me, because that thud factor is going to make and keep books relevant for the foreseeable future. Everyone's on Kindle, everyone's reading their devices online, but there's something about that thud factor which I don't know. I can, I'll get off the call with you, I'll send you a book in the mail, I'll have it signed. It's something about opening that packaging and getting a physical product in somebody's hands, which I totally agree with that. I love that that whole concept. I love physical books, and I just wish that all these training programs that we have wouldn't be going online. We could have physical products, but that's where they're going. But I see what you're saying with books. There's just something about them that is magical, that gives you the credibility and the authority, and it's just a great gift to give somebody. So I love that thud factor.
Let's not forget.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let's not forget, too, that a book will ultimately outlive nearly any other form of marketing, of whiz-bang, social media. I mean, if you want to go very far back, you can look at Think and Grow Rich. You can look at some of the books, even from the 1800s, that were used to create authority for their authors. Those books created authority. They minted their authors' credibility long before any of this social media stuff. So it's sort of like, even when Snapchat, even when XYZ social media app, even when all of those had died off or evolved into something else, we will still have books, and they will still satisfy their purpose as marketing tools and credibility builders.
That's great. I love that. How is what you're doing with the 7-hour book different from a ghostwriting service?
First of all, there's our emphasis on having a purpose behind the book. We're not just writing pretty words. We're not just creating a book to create a book. We have a definite purpose that we establish with our authors as to why this book is being out, and we prize results. When we have your book out there, we focus on what is the ROI going to be, what is this going to do for them, and how is it going to improve the author's life. That's 100% our focus. We're not also English majors. I mentioned to you before the call, Gino, I have a background in advertising, so I bring that to it, as do the members of my staff. So we're focused on making this text that compels people to read it. I've also written sales letters, as have my staff, so we structure the text in many cases along those lines. So while it is entertaining and it is informative and doesn't read specifically like a sales text, it has that emphasis, it has that call to action. It's getting people to come to your website. It's getting people to call you to take action like that. That's a very core difference between us and ghostwriting services. Another one, quick one for you, would be that we're not out to drag our feet. Ghostwriting services, for the most part, take months and longer. They're not focused on what's the most productive, what's the most, what's the fastest way to get this done and out and get the author reaping the benefits. They're not focused on any of that. They're focused on let's move slowly, let's go through this, because they're writing it like English majors, and that's not us.
And for all the listeners out there, that's a huge point, because we've looked into ghostwriting services, and Nick is not telling you how expensive ghostwriting services are. They can cost upwards of how much, Nick? $20,000 to $25,000 for a book, and the way they justify it is the way Nick just described. It can take them months and painstaking months to go through a book. Do you agree with that? I mean, that's what I found in my experience with ghostwriters.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. That's absolutely how they see it. They also, for better or worse, emphasize the amount of New York Times best-selling books they've written, or the amount of New York Times top 100 books they put up there. And really, to the average business owner, that doesn't mean anything, because that's more a feather in the cap of the ghostwriter themselves, that, hey, they've written a book that makes this list, than necessarily that it's done anything for the author. And there's also no guarantee that the author's book will even make that list. So I would say, Gino, that that's another thing to really look out for. That is the person who's offering a ghostwriting service just trying to create a book that kind of makes them look good, or is the book going to do a specific thing for the client?
I agree with that. And one thing that always strikes a chord with me and Jake is Rich Dad. When Rich Dad says he's a best-selling author, he's not a best-writing author. And that's one of the things I heard from you before, saying that you stress how you're going to sell this book and how you're going to structure the book. It's not just your best writing author, you're a best-selling author. So I think that's one of the great things that sounds like your company brings to the table. I like that. I really enjoy that.
It is. And, one of the reasons why I emphasize best-selling versus New York Times bestselling is that when you write a New York Times bestseller, in most cases, it's very difficult to target your specific niche and the people who are most likely to be most interested in you within that niche. You have to go very broad, very mass market. Versus if you're writing a book to sell as many copies as you can within your niche or within your particular investment or real estate area of expertise, you can go very general, you can go very specific. And you can also charge a heck of a lot more for that book if you're only selling to people within your niche than you ever could for a New York Times oriented book, for a book that you were trying to get on the New York Times list. There's nothing saying if you're selling a book just within your niche, just to people in your market, that you could not sell your book for upwards of $20, $50, $100 or more dollars if the content in there and the value in there is that.
That's great. I know a book is typically a large investment. Jake and I have written one. What kind of return on investment can an investor expect from the 7-hour book?
Right. One of the first returns on investment is that we guarantee you that within when you first get started, we guarantee that you're going to be able to sell at least, if our numbers are correct, that you'll sell at least 10 copies of your book within the first 30 days. So we go ahead and we guarantee you that. And if you don't sell at least 10 copies of your book within 30 days of it being out, go ahead, show us the marketing plan we gave you, and we'll then go ahead and buy 10 copies of your book and then send them to anyone you want. So that, Gino, is an immediate ROI that we guarantee. Beyond that, I think the ROI for a specific author is going to depend on their circumstances, but we certainly help them to get something from the book, and we really don't rest on our end until the author has achieved their goals.
Do you have any titles you've written in the last, 6 months? Maybe the readers can go check them out and see what they look like.
Well, that's actually a distinction between us and these ghostwriting services and these sort of book publishers as well. Mm-hmm. We allow authors to truly have their own book, in the sense that we don't write the book for them, have everyone think that it's their book, but then plaster it up on our website or plaster it up in our materials. Mm-hmm. Because we found that when people and when companies do that, it then becomes obvious that, oh, this isn't really the person's book. They're saying it's their book. Their name's on it. The company's name isn't on it. But anyone who uses Google can just type in the name of the book and instantly see that, oh, this person didn't write their book. So it sort of calls their authority into question. So for that reason, we certainly have testimonials. We certainly have people we've worked with, but we don't openly share the titles or who the book is, because we feel it detracts from their own credibility.
I think that's a fantastic point. I know a lot of these services like to thump their chests, and that's their testimonial. And it almost feels as if you don't own the book. It feels as if someone else did it for you, and that makes a huge difference. I like that. That's an excellent distinction between the ghostwriting space and a lot of the other guys that are doing this. That's kudos to you, because it might be a little bit more difficult for you to show your testimonials and show the product, the finished product. But at the same time, I guess you're protecting the person's credibility and the person's, I guess, I don't know what to say the word mojo, but his ability to say that I wrote this book, which in effect he sort of did with your guidance. But I guess you guys aren't even taking the credit. That's great. I love that a lot. That's great what you guys are doing. Let me wrap this up. There's a lot of stuff going on here. I like the greatest property, the life experience. That is excellent. Where you can help somebody craft their story. What really caught me was the thud factor. The thud factor is so powerful in a book. You write the book, bam, it's right in front of your face. The 7-hour book, it didn't sound plausible to me at the beginning. I'm like, how can you get something done? But I see your model. You're there with the person, you're recording the stuff, and you just basically hold their hands. I think that's a fantastic way, and I like the fact that you say that, hey, listen, for you guys to, once you're doing it and you're actually teaching yourselves, I think that's another fantastic reason to get a book written. Nick, how do people get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with us would be to visit our website, contentcore.net, which is content, then core with an S, like the Marine Corps, .net. From there, they'll submit our contact form with their idea for a book, their name, their email, and we'll then be in touch with them once they submit that. The thing I would add, though, Gino, is that when we say your idea for a book, it doesn't have to be the most ingenious, greatest, well-developed idea ever. Someone can just put down their thoughts, something that they've kicked around their head as an idea, and use that to submit the form. Because we find that a lot of people get hung up on what the idea sounds like before they even submit it, before they even get in touch with us. So I would say that that's the best way. Then once they do submit it and we get in touch with them, we'll usually work with aspiring authors initially to offer what's called a starter set. The starter set being for under $100, the person can get a roadmap, they can collaborate with us on a basic level, they don't have to commit to any of our plans, and they can really see what the book could look like and if this is something that they do want to pursue.
Nick, that's great. I think you're giving people an excuse not to have an excuse to write a book. And that's what I like, because everyone out there, every single person out there has a story. And to the experts out there saying, you know what, I only own 50 apartment units, you always have to remember to yourself, there's people that are ahead of you and there's people that are behind you. You're trying to reach the people that have not caught up to you yet, and there's so many of them out there. And I think a book can convey your message. It can convey motivation, inspiration, and with Nick's help, you'll be able to craft a message, and you'll be able to craft a great story, for the person writing the book. Nick, it was a pleasure doing this. I got to say that I think Jake and I are going to be calling you for our next book. It's going to make it a lot easier for us to write a book and to convey our messages. So thanks again for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Gino. It's been a pleasure talking with you and sharing some insights for the listeners.
Thanks again. Take care.
Okay, that's going to do it for today. If you found value in this episode, please don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. We really appreciate it. Also, if you'd like to speak with us, we are now doing 2 30-minute strategy sessions every Friday. You can sign up for these at jakeandgino.com. This has been another episode of the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, the only show that teaches that it's education times action that equals success. I'm Jake, and he's Gino. Over and out.
We trust that you enjoy the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast. Visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. See you next time when Jake and Gino share more of their investing secrets with you.